Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 118 of PMI Live. It is, of course, the final Friday of the month, and it is 3 p.m. in the UK. Welcome. It's great to have you with us. For those of you who are first time with us today, it's great to have you with us. Where have you been? It's episode 118. But on that note, if you have missed any of the episodes, you'll find them all in our knowledge hub at pmi.co.uk. A couple of things, a bit of housekeeping first of all. PMI Live is, as its name suggests, a live event. So if you are joining us on one of the live streams on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, you can still join us in the live session. We've got both a poll and a live interactive exercise for you this afternoon. So you can only join those if you're in the live session. Good news if you are, but you can register too at pmi.co.uk/webinars, where it's still time to register and join us live. So this topic today is struggling to drive change, how to influence without executive authority. Now, it's clearly resonated given the number of registrations we've had today. Before I get into the detail and ask Warren to introduce himself, I just want to remind everyone of where these topics come from. And the answer is from you. Our participants in PMI Lives, and anyone that is trained through our apprenticeship business and anyone that's trained through our training business all get a voice of the customer service survey. And the last question on that is, what topics would you like us to cover in PMI Live? And we then take all of those results, thousands of responses, and collate them and try and identify trends within them. And this came roaring to the top, and that's been borne out by the number of you who've registered today. If you have registered, fear not, you will also receive the recordings of the sessions next week, along with your actions for insights email that we'll send out during the course of the following week after every PMI Live. But in any case, every episode is available, as I say, in the Knowledge Hub, along with all of the episodes of our podcasts, infographics, you name it, it's in there. Finalists at the MCA Awards for Best Leader, Best Thought Use of Thought Leadership last month, and very pleased we were with that too. So without further ado, those of you who don't know me, my name's Rich Seddon. I'm Group Chief Executive at PMI Capella. And my jobs these days, having worked for nearly 13 years client side, I am responsible for leading several major change programs in some of our big accounts, and also lead our internal strategy and its execution. I'm delighted to be joined by my fellow longest serving employee, joint record, Warren Knight. Warren, would you like to introduce yourself and also give us an idea of what client work you've been getting involved in recently?
Thanks, Rich. First of all, a very warm welcome to everybody. So yeah, my name is Warren Knight. I'm a director consultant. I've also got two roles of head of our strategy practice and head of internal people development, which roles I enjoy very much. What I'm doing in a moment, Rich, actually, large part of my work is based around sort of step change process improvement. But actually, at the moment, I've got a strong focus upon quality management systems through both the quality practitioner level 4 apprenticeship that I'm delivering at the moment, and also I have a client where I'm working on aspects of their quality management system. So it's nice to get a focus sometimes on the daily management of our processes and how that's required to support quality and the step change improvement, of course.
Thanks, Warren. So 25 years in the consulting industry, working across a vast repertoire of clients and sectors in numerous locations around the world. This topic, how to influence without executive authority, in your experience, why does it keep coming up and why does it matter so much?
Yeah, 25 years, that's scary. I think it keeps coming up because we are all involved in leading change. Actually, not at some point in our career, actually often in our career. It might only be leading change on our work that we do on a daily basis. It may actually be leading change that influences our team, our department, or even larger. May even have a role in it. So we're all leaders in some shape or form at times. And of course, a large part of that leadership surrounds the need to influence. Influence our colleagues to align and work together, because it's only when we're aligned and we work together, are we effective? Are we working as a system rather than a heap?
Great analogy. Yeah, it's brilliant. So I know some of the things we're going to explore today will touch on a range of, I think they're best described as lenses, Warren. So lenses that people can use. We're trying to avoid the word tools here, but they might be deemed as tools. Some of those lenses, if I frame this correctly, are about providing our audiences with extra ways to look at problems, extra ways to consider the world, and ultimately make them more effective change agents.
Yeah.
So on that note, would you like to take us through the detail and what we're going to cover today then?
Yeah, indeed. I think the idea of lenses is super important. It's not tools, because if we apply a tool, a technique, that's not authentic and it doesn't work in this arena. So yes, it's all about influencing that executive authority, but the subtitle of this is around coaching, and how does a coaching mindset, a coaching lens, if you like, support us with how we engage and support our colleagues around change and influencing that change.
Okay.
So what are we going to cover today? So we're going to talk about coaching itself. So what is coaching? I'm sure everybody out there has a view of coaching. I mean, particularly if we think about it from a sports perspective, top athletes have coaches, so we get a sense of that. However, what about coaching in a sense of change and influence? And actually, really, I would suggest a lot of coaching in sports is actually around that, rather than coaching on a technical skill or competence. So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at influence itself, and what do we actually mean by influence, and what are the conditions that we need to consider in order to generate effective influence.
Fantastic. Sorry. Just go. I'll go. I was just going to intervene. Sorry, apologies. So, folks, I forgot to mention earlier on, the chat and Q&A are live, as many of you already started using. Warren and I are live. We are here. Please do keep your questions coming. Take advantage of the fact that we're here. The more you interact, the more we'd love to hear your perspectives, share your experience. If something on one of these slides or one of the comments resonates with you, doesn't resonate with you, chuck it into the chat and we'd love to hear from you. It really does make it come alive. I also forgot to say we have live transcript available as well. So if you do want to listen to Warren or myself speaking another language, it's up in the more option, and we are available in multiple languages, translating live. And that's it. Over to you, Warren.
No problem.
So smooth.
Yeah, sure. So moving on to the third point, one of the major things that will drive our ability to influence is around awareness. Okay, and from here on in, I may talk about stakeholders. I may refer to them as clients as well. Either way, the level of awareness that our clients have about a situation is very influential on how we can influence them. So we'll look a little bit farther at creating awareness, and a sort of a sub point of that is then how do we make good interventions, okay, to ensure we're maximizing that awareness. So Coaching. Let's just set the sort of backcloth for this afternoon's session. As I mentioned earlier, in some shape or form, we're often leading change, we're often some kind of change agent, regardless of what role that we're in. What's our role as a change agent? Well, we're trying to identify opportunities for improvement, and therefore we often get involved in managing the change process itself. As part of that, we need to be able to influence others to act. So who do we need to influence? I like to think of my clients in two categories. One category of clients are leaders and managers. And what am I trying to do to influence them to act, or what am I trying to get them to act around? Well, firstly and foremost is actually to personally commit, not only professionally, but personally commit to the initiative. And therefore, by generating that personal commitment, I want them to put their hands in their pockets and willingly provide the finances, the resources that we need. A good leader or manager who's committed to a particular improvement initiative will then become a key change agent themselves. So I'm looking for them to be able to champion that change and to help me to remove the blockers that naturally occur when we're trying to do something new or do something differently. The other set of clients I've got are the implementation community. So if the leaders and managers are the people who are kind of leading the change, in a way, the implementation community are kind of almost the victims of the change. So they're the people who are going to have to firstly work with this change, get to understand it, get to know it, understand what they need to do and do differently in order to make that change successful and to develop the necessary competence and apply those new practices. They will also need, from a belief perspective, they will either need to do one of two things. They'll either need to commit to the change, or if not commit to the change, they need to at least accept the change. Okay, so there's a subtlety which is probably different from the leaders and managers. Okay, so two groups, and some of the needs are similar, some are different, but from a coaching perspective, universally applicable. Now, in terms of the argument for supporting influencing the implementation community, I mean, that's pretty obvious. But I imagine some people out there might be thinking, well, do we really need to influence the leaders and managers? And the answer is yes, definitely, because they will be going through their own change process, even though they're leading the change. And this is a quote I often use, that actually it's often the people who lead the change that actually have to change the most. And in what sense? Lots of things. They have to embody the change that they want to see others make. They need to embody the behaviors and the ways that they need other people to behave. That in themselves is a bit of a mountain to climb and may require some level of adjustment. They themselves will need to influence and manage the change process. These may be skills that they need to develop or improve. So there's lots of ways that actually we probably need to coach and support leaders and managers. And I think this statement really sums it up. Okay, who could argue with this? If we're asking the community to move forward, it's not really possible for leaders to believe that they can stay static in all of this. So very much, I've got two types of stakeholders, two types of clients. One, I'm helping to lead the change. The other, I'm helping to accept and adopt the change. Which brings me on to coaching itself. Okay. I'm sure as I said, we've all got a view of coaching. Here's some of the highlights for me, and starting to make the connections between coaching and supporting and influencing people in times of change. So first and foremost, coaching is based upon a collaborative partnership. Okay, and that's important because change is a social process. Okay, influence is a social process. We don't do it in a vacuum. So there's already parallels between coaching and influencing. Coaching is also about supporting people to achieve specific outcomes, same as influencing. How do we do that? By facilitating, as it says here, that insight in that self-discovery so that people can generate the necessary energy for action, okay, and move themselves towards those goals and those outcomes. So the key characteristics there are important, particularly this idea that they're coaching is non-directive. We're not trying to exhibit or apply extrinsic motivation here. Okay, we're not trying to force people. We're in a sense trying to help them move forward in their change situation. Confidential and supportive, all very important in this arena, as well as focused upon growth. And in a sense, okay, change and the need to change represents the challenge and the opportunity of growth for us as individuals. So there's huge amounts of parallel here, huge amounts of parallel. And I'm just going to use there are many sort of processes that people learn around coaching. A common one is the GROW model. And I'm going to just reference that one a couple of times as a way of thinking about some of the more technical parallels with coaching and influence. So GROW being a process of clarify the goals, then think about the realities of the current situation. And that, of course, identifies a gap in attention to improve. Then we start to consider what the options are. So what could that person do? What could the client do based upon their current reality to move forward? And of course, most importantly, what's their will, their levels of energy to make the change happen? So bringing all that forward, how does a coaching mindset relate to change and influence? Change is about transitioning. We change our processes, but people don't change, they transition. Transition is about the process of becoming familiar, competent, and safe in a new situation. So I often think about working with my clients in change is represented by this sort of Indiana Jones type rope bridge there. Okay, I don't know about you, but that looks a bit risky. It doesn't look like a solid bridge. There looks like there could be a risk, an opportunity for me to fall off the bridge and fall in the water. Okay, and being on this side of the bridge, okay, currently I'm in a place of safety and comfort and competence because I hadn't stepped onto the bridge. I'm familiar with this territory. The bridge represents a risk, and the so-say benefits of the improvement on the other side, well, I can't quite see them at the moment. It's surrounded by trees. So what actually are the benefits? Okay, is there anything in this for me? And so particularly when we're a victim of change, but it can be the same for leading change, risk, change represents risk. It represents the fear of the unknown. Okay, it represents moving from a period of comfortableness into uncomfortableness, and there's lots of emotional cost associated with that. So how can coaching help with that? Well, it provides that safe space where people can share and work with their concerns about the change. They can start to surface, with the help of the coach, what's kind of holding them back. What is it about their view of the situation and the change that actually could be holding them back, and to turn possibly those unproductive thoughts and behaviors into something much more productive, okay, and generate a much more positive outlook around, actually there is effort involved, but there could be lots of benefits as well. And a big part of solving this unsettling situation that we find ourselves in is about us being able to clarify, what we need to be, who we need to be, how we need to be within the new world. And coaching is a great opportunity to help us to clarify our role in a new environment. So there's a huge amounts of parallel here. The final thing I would say why coaching is a good mindset to adopt when we support people and want to influence people around change. As I mentioned earlier, it's a social process. So primarily, influence is based upon the strength of the relationship that we have with our client. Okay. If we don't have a relationship, it means we don't have deep rapport with that person. If we don't have deep rapport, in other words, I have a good understanding of them, they have a good understanding of me, there will be no trust. Where there is no trust, there is no chance of influence. So it is definitely a social process. So is coaching. And so the way that we go about building our relationships and our contract with people to coach is exactly what we need to do for influence. Same thing. And we're not going to go into thinking about how we improve our working relationships, but I have done a previous webinar around building great working relationships that people might want to dig into if they're interested in that. The bit I'm going to focus in here on is the second 2 points of, okay, let's think about some of your clients. Let's think about the relationships that you have with them, working relationships, and what do they perceive to be your value in that working relationship? And the perception of value that you bring in that relationship will determine the level of influence that you have. So the value that you can bring, I fit into basically three categories. We got the specialist, we got the implementer, and we got the advisor. Okay, or let's replace the word advisor with coach. Okay, for the purposes of today, same thing. So if our client sees our value as a specialist, typically in those situations, they think they know what their problem is. They think they know what the solution is. What they're doing is they need our support. They're asking for our specialist help. So this typically is of a technical nature. We offer technical advice. And we will be able to influence them within the confines of that advice because they're asking for it. But it's unlikely that we're going to have permission to influence outside of that scope, outside of those boundaries. So influence is very limited. Often, particularly if our day job is being a change agent of some description, often our clients value us as an implementer, a brilliant brain and a set of hands to help them get the change delivered. Now, thing is about an implementer is that you'll probably have influence with the client around how the work is it done, how the implementation happens. However, they're still going to have a pretty good idea of what their problem is and what their solution is, and they're employing you to be the implementer. Okay, so again, your influence is limited. It's only when they accept you in that coaching position and mindset do you have the maximum level of influence, because at that point you can help them work on understanding their problem as well as helping them to develop their way forward. Think back to the grow model. That's exactly what you're doing. Okay, goals, realities, options, and wills. So in the coaching situation, when we're in a coaching relationship, we have the maximum opportunity for influence.
Warren, I've got a question come in on one of the live streams that I just thought would be pertinent at this point. And it's an observation actually, and paraphrasing here, so it's on my other screen. Most change agents are viewed in the implementer arena and often are deployed to fixing problems. Therefore, can be very difficult to progress along this profile that you're proposing here. That was some terrible paraphrasing, forgive me. But so thinking about that, then, I mean, it's a reflection that I share. And so often people that get engaged in this change work are doing so because they are excellent problem solvers. So it can be a real struggle to make that migration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's Bob on the money, actually. Yeah, I would agree. I think all too often we fall in that trap of just being too good as an implementer, too good as a problem solver. I guess that's a whole conversation. It's a whole webinar. It's a whole conversation in itself. I think, first of all, we're always working hard to move ourselves up the ladder of influence, if you like, from the relationship point of view. But remember, it's back to the relationship. Okay, so it's about how are you continuing to expand the relationship. Okay, how are you pushing the limits of rapport? Okay, in both directions. Okay, in terms of your understanding of them, their understanding of you. And also, if you are a good problem solver, if you are a good implementer, use the credibility. Okay, use that credibility to help you, okay, to get people to kind of see beyond the current thing and see that actually you have that value to offer in a more coaching way.
And the second thing I'd add to that, Warren, just before we move on to the poll, is also think about these different roles and reflect on your own behavior and where you think you do fit them, what you can do to personal action plan to move between these roles. I think so often we don't do that as change agents, and you get stuck in the lower levels, whereas actually the aspiration to move up here should be there. Okay, we've got a poll coming up then, folks.
Yeah. Can I just, because I'll add to that, because I think it's actually pertinent to the poll as well. Yeah, so there's two things happening actually here. First and foremost, let's remember, because when I work with my clients and I'm coaching coaches, if you like, okay, I talk about this and they'll go, oh yeah, I'm definitely the advisor. First and foremost, it's your client who determines your level of value, not you. Okay. And secondly, the more subtle thing, which you rightly bring up, Rich, which is great. And what are you doing to reinforce?
Yes, the way to look at it. Yeah, okay.
The position you're in. Okay. And almost, block yourself in rather than break yourself out.
Great point. Yeah, it's that kind of reverse angle to look at the problem that you're dissatisfied with. So, folks, just before Warren takes you through the poll, we're going to pop this on the screen shortly. You don't need to answer in the chat. We'll pop the poll screen up in a moment. But before we do that, Warren, do you want to take us through what you're asking here?
Yeah, please. So exactly based upon the previous slide. So I'd like you now to consider some of your key clients. I think it's difficult. If you focus upon one, it's probably not a big sample size. If you focus upon all of them, you're probably going to water down the response. So somewhere in the middle, think about a few key clients that you are attempting to actively influence, and think about where they perceive your value. So answer one would be they perceive your value as being some kind of technical expert. Answer two is they perceive your dominant value to be in the implementer role. Okay. Number three would be actually they dominantly see you as a coach. Okay. And an advisor. Answer number four, actually my relationship doesn't fit in any of these things, in which case I'll be really interested to get your feedback. And answer five is I don't know, and that is absolutely fine, because of course it's an opportunity to start thinking and finding out. One thing I would say is, again, think about the dominant position, because of course you will flip between these things, but it's where the dominance is.
Okay, glamorous assistant Neil, would you like to bring the poll on screen, please? Thank you very much. And there we go. I can see that's popped up. So have a read of the questions and specifically think about what do you think is most valued from yourself currently. And as Warren mentioned, if you don't fit into any of those boxes, do put a comment in the chat.
Yeah, it's a model, so it's not right. Hopefully it's useful.
Okay, great. I can see responses coming in now on that. And Warren, this kind of plays to the conversation we were having a moment ago, doesn't it? That all too often we are dissatisfied with the results. If you think about your previous slide, but don't have a means or don't make the space to reflect on where are we on that journey, and in those perceptions. But also, I think that point you made about flipping it on its head. What are you doing to create those barriers as well? Could be really helpful. The barriers to progression could be really helpful as well.
Yeah. It's a great point, Rich. Thank you. I include myself in this, but it's that, it's that the frustration of, if we only spent as much time planning our stakeholder engagement process and plan as we do, our actual physical technical implementation, then we may make some steps forward. Definitely.
Okay, so results are in on that then. So we've got the second answer there, your ability to deliver change activities coming out ahead, with one item added to the chat. But yeah, a bit of a mix there, but clearly those first two standing out in terms of percentage responses. Ron, is that what you expected?
Yeah, quite frankly.
And why was that? Why does that fit your expectations? What was on your mind?
Because I think in a strange kind of way, it's very easy and obvious way for us to demonstrate our value to our clients and to our organization. It's in a sense physical. We measure it, we report stats on it, so a kind of, yeah, it's easy for us to demonstrate value in that, and it's dare I say, it's a more straightforward process and easier competency set, because it's more technical of nature. You can get your hands around it, whereas coaching, like that leadership thing we said earlier, it's a little bit more tricky.
Okay, cool. Right. Thank you very much, folks.
Great. So let's spend just a little bit of time thinking about influence, what it is and what it's not. Okay. If turkeys could, they wouldn't vote for Christmas. Okay. And I don't believe there's much you could do if they could talk to influence them to vote for Christmas. Okay. So let's just think about that for a second. You can't compel people to do something which is against their perceived, okay, best interest. Because what we're actually talking about here in its worst form is coercion or manipulation. It's not influence. Okay. Now that may seem obvious. However, you know, in my work when I'm coaching coaches, if you like, okay, the amount of times I get people saying, "Can you just give me some Jedi type mind tricks so I can get this person to do that?" Okay, yep, I know that's what we desire, but actually that's bordering on something which is not influence.
Mm-hmm.
So what is influence then? So influence is about alignment. It's about creating conditions for our clients where they choose, very important, they choose to move in a direction, okay, that aligns with what we desire, what we need to accomplish in our change initiatives, because it also serves them. And at the moment, they may be blocked from seeing that for many reasons. Okay, but that's our challenge, and that's really where the coaching comes in. So let's think about that a little bit more. So what might be some of the conditions that we need to consider, okay, for effective influence? Well, all about shared goals. You know, currently, what are we trying to accomplish? What's our client trying to accomplish? Do we really understand that? Okay. Does our client understand? Do we understand? You know, what would be of benefit for them getting on board with the initiative? Back to it's a social process. How much trust and credibility do they have in us? We got to really work with their reality. They may be under lots of conflicting pressures. Okay, this may not be a priority for them. That might be a lot going on. We need to understand what those things are, and we need to incorporate those into our strategy. Kind of related to that is the timing and readiness. You know, how does that fit with them? Is this the right time based upon their reality? Sometimes we need social proof. Okay, we need to see others doing it as well. Okay, or we need to hear others say it's a good thing to do. Always to keep this as influence rather than some kind of coercion, we always need to respect their views and their ability to make choices for themselves. And last but not least, and we're going back to our rope bridge now, the level of risk involved. Let's not forget that, because whilst we got benefits that may generate positive energy for change, the risks involved will certainly diminish that energy. So now let's connect that. If those are the things that we're working with for effective influence, let's now connect that back to coaching. Well, it's a social process. We know that. That's good. Okay. Because a lot of these things we will only uncover these things and be able to work with them if we have the right relationship. Think about the grow model. Think about the process we're going through with coaching, about that facilitating self-discovery in action. Okay. Goals, realities, options will. Hopefully you can just straight away see the parallels between these conditions and those 4 steps within the coaching process. And ultimately, whether it's coaching or influencing, ultimately we're about generating that intrinsic motivation to move forward. Okay, it cannot be extrinsic motivation, it cannot be some form of, if I put it bluntly, punishment or reward. It's got to come from within here. I'm going to do this because I believe it's the right thing to do, and I believe it's going to be of value to me. So, really good match. A really good match indeed.
Indeed. Just quick comment come into the chat there, Warren. Understanding motivation is key, but it's often invisible. I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
And what I find really interesting about this slide is it helps with circles, but again, you've got the more lenses here to start thinking about these different attributes. And I'd build on that comment in the chat about, it's often invisible. We often also don't take the time to think about these problems in these ways and using these lenses. We just don't. We're so busy in the do, getting on with it, that we don't develop our own strategies for influence and think about where is this going right, where's it's going wrong. Their reality is sometimes considered, but where's the rest of this stuff? Even if you do part of it, it can make a difference. And I think that's one of the observations I've made, having worked with thousands of change agents over the years, is how rarely we step back, think about this, rather than just what emails are we going to send to tell people about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And what comes to me when you just said that, Rich, is the fact of, we might ask ourselves the question, how motivated is this person? But that even itself, that's a summary word, it will be influenced by all of these things. So if nothing else, let's use this as a check sheet. Let's use this as a set of lenses to start digging into that concept of motivation in much more detail. Yeah, absolutely. A lot to think about. So on that point, generating awareness. Okay, so your awareness of them, okay, and also their awareness of themselves and their situation is absolutely fundamental. So what do we want? We want two things for our client in terms of awareness. We want them to be self-aware. In other words, we want them to understand, what is it they value? What is it they're trying to accomplish? What makes them tick? What are the triggers to make them frustrated? These kind of things. Okay. Now, you might be thinking, well, surely we know ourselves, don't we? Well, to a degree, yeah. But how often is it in the foreground? Okay, versus in the background, where we're not really conscious of it. Okay. And of course, what we need to do is we need to understand as the client needs to understand the situation, the change situation, in order to be able to move forward and make the right decisions. Technically, raising awareness is also an important part of generating intrinsic motivation. So, without a healthy level of dissatisfaction with the current situation, so think back to the rope bridge. I'm on this side of the rope bridge at the moment. Okay, if I'm warm, cozy, confident, I'm not going to change. Why would I go across the rope bridge? So I need to be looking around me going, it could be better. There could be somewhere else I could go, which could be better than where I am now. And raising that awareness, okay, not creating dissatisfaction, we're back to coercion here, okay, but surfacing the dissatisfaction which is naturally there is part of influence. Also, it's important that we raise awareness in an effective way to overcome cognitive biases, and we're going to pick that one up in a future session. But a simple cognitive bias is the old adage of, do you see the glass half full or half empty? Okay, those kind of biases will affect how the client sees the situation and your level of influence. And ultimately, what we want is we want the client to be able to see the whole picture. We tend to focus upon the foreground of a picture, okay, and the background of the picture, which typically is important, also tends to be blurred because we're not concentrating on it. The job of the coach using those questions, etc., is to bring the background into the foreground as well, so we have a complete picture. Okay, and I'm going to leave you with, are we seeing the complete picture here? One of the ways that we can help generate and help the client to diagnose the data that they have is using catalytic questions. I know when I was taught coaching, it was all about asking good questions. Okay, and so we talk about open, ask open questions. Yes, but actually, let's be more specific and technical here. What we're talking about is catalytic questions. So a catalytic question, okay, is about helping the client to process their own data for the purposes of learning. Okay, it's facilitative in nature and non-directive, as it says on the screen, and there are various types of catalytic questions, whether we're helping the client to surface data that they're not focused upon, whether we're helping them to challenge their awareness of themselves by using different hypothetical scenarios, etc., etc. Okay, so it's very much the basis of coaching. However, it's not the only tool in the box, in my view, because the problem with catalytic question is it's limited to their data, so it's limited in their effectiveness. So I'm going to pick up on John Heron's 6 categories of intervention, catalytic being one of them, but there are some others. We have informative interventions. Sometimes our client just doesn't know, so we got to provide some information. That could be interpreting their state. It could be just simply presenting some facts that they're unaware of. Sometimes, and this goes against what we've talked about so far, we do need to be prescriptive. But very clearly on the screen, it says it's about directing behavior without impinging that free will. Okay, so it's not telling somebody to do something, it's about suggesting, proposing, and advising. Sometimes actually we need to support people. Okay, and what do we mean by that? It's about affirming some aspect of the other person. I'm sure we've all done it. I often phone you, Rich, and say, am I going mad here? But can you tell me if my thought on this subject is okay or not? And sometimes we need somebody to just go, yeah, do you know what? Actually, that's a good way of thinking about it. Or actually, if that's what you value, that's okay. To inspire confidence. Sometimes we are limited by our thinking or our attitudes and behaviors. It's a blind spot. Sometimes what we actually need to do is confront. Often seen as being a negative thing, but actually very positive, because what we're doing is we're removing what's blocking the person from moving forward and allowing their energy to flow. So that's either by providing challenge viewpoints or by providing feedback. And then finally, we got cathartic. We are emotional creatures, and often what blocks us from moving forward in change situations is our feelings, okay, and about how we let go. So sometimes encouraging the client to think about their feelings and to express those feelings, reflect upon them, It's a way of, again, removing the blockers and enable movement forward.
Fantastic. So folks, we have got an interactive exercise that we're going to do as part of Extra Slice, which will be at the end of the webinar. We're going to take these points and deliver a self-reflective exercise. So it's going to take 10 minutes and we'll do that at 4 o'clock. Anyone that wants to stay with us, just stay on the webinar. And we've got an interactive whiteboard for you to think about some of these points in this specific model that Warren's developed here. So that's coming up straight after. For those of you who can't stay on for that, we will, of course, record and we'll stay recording for the duration. It'll be in there as well. So Warren, thinking about this model particularly, I mean, I know I keep saying this throughout this, but again, how rarely do we see people taking the time to think about these brackets? And for me, the thing that's important here is to not try and force these definitions and say, oh, I am therefore supportive, informative, but whatever. But the fact that these categories exist to help us think and contextualize a problem, for me, I find that really useful. And it's not, this isn't a checklist. This isn't a checklist of it's not a personality or otherwise diagnosis. These are simply ways and concepts to think through the issues that you're facing. I'm assuming you agree with that kind of stance, Warren.
Absolutely. We need a bigger toolbox and just keep asking questions. And it's about the right use of them. To be honest with you, the starting point is about awareness. It's about awareness about what we've got, in terms of interventions that we can play out. Of course, it's about getting the right intervention at the right time. And so there's almost, once we've got awareness, then we got to think about planning our practice and developing our practice so that these become more normal in the moment. Okay, they become in the muscle. Right?
That's the thing, isn't it? It's muscle memory and practice.
Absolutely. But in the first stages, and I'm the same as everybody else. I looked at these and went, right, okay, so how might I deliver a supportive interaction?
Yeah.
Okay. And then try PDSA, try it out, see what happens, and refine till I get it in the muscle.
Yeah.
But don't put yourself under pressure, I would say. What I would say is have your normal coaching conversation. And what you might do is you might recognize now through a different lens. You might go, there's a missing piece of data here. I'm not going to try and jump in right now. I'm going to come away from this conversation. I'm going to figure out how to then make that intervention properly, and then I'm going to have another stab at it another day.
Brilliant, thank you, Warren. So for those people who've got to jump off, we're going to wrap up with some summary of key points now, and then go into PMI Live Extra Slice at 4 o'clock for 10 minutes.
Cool. Right. So very quickly. So hopefully I've demonstrated that coaching, which I'm sure a lot of us are pretty familiar with, is an excellent mindset and approach for helping us to influence and facilitate change. Back to the point that you made very first of all, it is first and foremost a mindset. Okay, it's not a set of tools. Let's remember though that this is all based upon the quality of the relationship that we have with the person we're trying to influence. Okay, so, consider that first and foremost. Let's make sure that our intent is clean. Okay, so therefore our approach will be clean. This is about, getting people intrinsically motivated to get on board. Gaining awareness is absolutely fundamental to gaining that intrinsic energy. Okay, so the more skilled we are at helping our clients to get that awareness, the more effective we're going to be.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Warren. Okay, so just before we step into that final session, there's just a few things we wanted to talk about. Warren, if you could jump on a couple of slides for me, that'd be really helpful.
Okay, you say when?
There we go. For those of you who haven't picked up, we are running Goals to Results Conference again, 17th of March 2026 at the University of Warwick in the UK. The agenda is live at pmi.co.uk/G2R or on that QR code. As I say, it's an action-packed agenda. Great headline speakers in there. The theme being performance improvement in an AI-driven world, because AI is your responsibility as a change agent. So whole thing themed, live, tickets now available. And a couple of other points before we move on. Warren, thank you. Don't make me say the immortal next slide, please. So there we go. So next month's PMI Live is not on the last Friday of the month. It's on Friday, the 19th of December. What better way than to end the year, working year, with a beer and a whole group of management consultants, I hear you ask. And we're going to be looking back. I've got a team of 6 people of our in-house experts coming together to consider the good, the bad, and the improved, telling real stories from the last year in performance improvement. Really relaxed, easygoing conversation, tapping into some gems of wisdom and gems of experience that our people have experienced for real during the course of the year. So the viewers that you need to leave us at this point, thank you so much for joining us for PMI Live this month. It's our pleasure and our privilege to be able to deliver these sessions to you. Thanks so much for joining. For those of you who are staying with us, it's time for PMI Live Extra Slice. We're going to jump into a Miro board exercise at this point, which is an interactive whiteboard. And Warren, before we share the link, do you want to talk us through what we're going to cover in this exercise? And then we'll get the link out to people. Just a note before we do that, when you do receive the link, we've got a password for you we're going to put into the chat. And you do not need to register for Miro. You can skip that session if you just read the notifications that are horribly confusing when they appear. You do not, if you aren't registered already, you don't have to. Just go through the skip options and you can join us on the whiteboard. Okay, before we share that link, Warren, what have we got here?
Right, okay, so here's our Miro board. As you can see, we've got the 6 categories of intervention laid out. With a definition and how it works. I've also added a few extra examples of what that might look like in practice, okay, if you're using that particular intervention. So, bit of analysis around preferences. Okay, we all have a preference about how we intervene with others. Some of these we will use more than others. So we're going to do a first cut analysis of your preferences and also the ones that you least use. Okay, so the process will be, once you get on the board, have a good read of these. Okay, and then what I want you to do, I'm going to come in a little bit closer. I want you to choose 2 that you think you use commonly. Okay, so 2 intervention types that in a sense are your preferred styles. Okay, and for those I want you to just locate a post-it note and I want you to just put an M in the post-it note. The M represents that those are the types that you use most often. I also want you to then to consider ones that maybe you don't use a great deal. Okay, they're not your preferred style, and pick 2. And then I want you to click on a post-it note and I want you to put L for least often. So as you can see, I've said that actually catalytic and confronting are 2 intervention types I use a lot. Okay, those are my preferences, and actually prescriptive and supportive being ones that I use less commonly, or my least preference. In terms of using Miro, hopefully when you go into the board, you won't need to do much moving around. It's right click, okay, to move around the board. It's either pinch if you're using a trackpad, or use your scroll wheel on your mouse, or you've got the plus and minus buttons here to zoom in and zoom out. Hopefully, though, you'll be able to see a free post-it note straight away, and it's just left click to go onto the post-it note.
Excellent. And Neil has just come through, keeping us waiting there and with bated breath for the password. Thanks, Neil. So you'll see the password is in there. It's all capitals. You can read that in the chat now. It's just the final part of that in capitals. You should be able to get in. If you click the Miro link and then enter the password, hopefully that will let you in, and I shall breathe a sigh of relief when I see other people on the board. Phew, you're in. Excellent. There we go. Final tech test of the day, hopefully. So as Warren said, just have a look at those aspects, and this is to help you think through your current behaviors. And just double click M for most and put an L for least often. And we're just interested to see what we're going to get here in terms of the responses. So we're going to give, how long are we giving for this, Warren?
Say 4 minutes.
Okay, 4 minutes to have a read through those. And remember that they aren't completely binary. They're definitions around it. They're lenses to think about. You don't need to fit every aspect of each one of these. Do have a think about it. Okay, so that's underway now. Disappointed you haven't got some fun calypso music for us, Warren, to have a little dance for this afternoon.
Yeah, bit of elevator music.
Shall I sing? Will that help? No, that will
Please.
not help. No, Neil's volunteered for any singing that goes on, but he'll need to take the custard cream out of his mouth in order to do that. See people coming in with answers on here. Now, this one really made me think earlier on, because I was trying to recognize people and put names, particularly to the middle band. I don't know why that one kind of jumped out to me particularly, but I was thinking about behaviors that I've seen recently, my own behaviors within some of these. And sometimes it is, I put in the chat earlier on, it is useful to think about names or teams or experiences to bring some of this stuff to life. Yeah, I found the informative and the prescriptive one most thought-provoking for me, because I find it's sometimes the areas that are done best and worst. But this is just my personal opinion. Don't know if you have a take on that one.
Well, I want to ask you what you think they're sort of best and worst. Yeah, I think again, it's for many reasons. The problem is we're often time pressured. So even though we want to maybe take a different approach, maybe we want to take a coaching approach, often we're so time pressured that we fall into the trap of going, I've got time, so just let me tell you, or just let me give you the facts. Okay. Where, you know, actually in the long run, if we create that space and create that time, we're able to get a more effective result. I think there's that. I think it's sometimes just, you know, it's how we've grown up, you know, and it's how we've been encouraged to develop and behave, particularly when we're in a more managerial position. Okay. On the positive side, yeah, I think we can question people into confusion. So sometimes, yeah, providing kind of information or sometimes people just want an answer or be guided.
Yeah, indeed. And I think the other thing that struck me with these is some of them are quite aspirational. In terms of the definitions, there's some behaviors in here that are aspirational, some undesirable as well, but and the catalytic one for me falls into that box, and really does also fall victim to the time pressure that you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
To take the time to surface the data, to really encourage reflection and explore consequences. We're so often too busy move on,
Yeah.
that there's a Radio 4 show at the moment, a comedy show called Too Long Didn't Read, and it it does feel like there's a lot of that, and the media we consume, the social media we consume, almost exaggerates that as well. So okay, time's up on the clock then, Warren. So you can see these responses we've got so far. What are you making of what's coming out here?
Right. Yes. So just for those who haven't done it yet, please just continue, because it's very valuable from a personal perspective. Helps us to become self-aware. So what am I looking at? What am I seeing? I'm frankly, I'm not very surprised that cathartic is something that we don't use often. And probably these days, my sort of view on sort of business, and we don't talk about how we feel in business, is all about being rational and logical. Maybe that's not quite true, but we are, I would say, primarily irrational beings, and a lot of what we masquerade as being logic and rationale is being driven by our emotions on some level.
Yep.
So yeah, it's asking somebody how do they feel about something. It's not seen as
meaning it.
Yes, and absolutely meaning it. Isn't, it's just not cricket, is it? It's just not done.
Yeah.
Often. So and also it gets personal. So back to relationship thing. Not surprised by that. I'm not surprised by confronting being low as well. That could be down to, be interested if there's any responses in the chat. That could be just down to our confidence and our skill level. Could be down to the situation where we could be influencing upwards here. So we may feel that, oh no, we can't really confront. Although again, we got to think about confronting in a different way.
Yep.
I'm not surprised to see informative, strong. I'm a little
data people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of facts, lots of information out there to be presented. Prescriptive. I thought there'd be a lot more prescriptive there, but that could be because again, who are we coaching here? Who are we trying to influence? All right. But again, even if we're influencing upwards, I don't believe that should stop us from proposing something or suggesting something. And I'm pleased to see that there is a 50-50 balance on the catalytic. Yeah.
Indeed. Thanks, Warren. So folks, this board will remain open in perpetuity, so do feel free to come back and revisit it if you find this model useful. It'll obviously be in the video as well, but any of these definitions, do feel free to come back and use this and reflect on it. If you would like to talk about any of the topics that we've covered today, do reach out to us. Full contact details are available on the website. Do follow us on LinkedIn. That's myself and Warren personally, or the company, which the details were shared earlier on, which where you find all the latest and greatest. So on that note, we're going to wrap up at this point, and thank you again for joining us. Thank you for staying on for PMI Live Extra Slice.
Yeah, indeed.
Great to have you with us. Don't forget, next month is the 19th of December, which is the final working day for us of the year. So do join us at 3 p.m. UK time for a relaxed look back at the year and some of the successes and challenges that we've encountered. Thanks, folks. Great to have you with us.
Brilliant. Cheers for now.